Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg was at the city council meeting. He joins me now by phone. Mayor, I want to ask you about the White House's response to this shooting. In today's press briefing, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this was a local matter. What's your response?
Well, it's a Sacramento matter, but it is also a national matter. Obviously, this is these sorts of horrific tragedies have occurred throughout the country. It's not unique to Sacramento, but now the spotlight is on us, and we have a moment in time to lead towards justice and real change, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
You mentioned justice and real change. You witnessed firsthand the hundreds of people, including Stephon Clark's brother, who have been protesting this entire activity at the city council meeting you were at last night. What's your office doing to address their outrage?
Well, first of all, I think it is very important to note that in the 10 or so days since Stephon Clark's death, that despite high emotions and very loud protests and what occurred last night in the City Hall chambers, no one has been hurt. There has been one arrest, and there's been very minimal property damage. And so I think that the community and its law enforcement officers have appropriately acted with great restraint, because I feel the anguish of the family. I feel the anguish of the community. I feel the trauma of the community, and it's my job to help lead not just a conversation, but a plan of action to translate that trauma and grief into justice and change, and that's what we intend to do. So we're going to channel this specifically into an immediate review of the policies, the protocols, and the training around many questions that arise out of the release of the video last week. We're not going to wait until the investigation is complete about legal culpability and legal liability to do so. In addition, we're going to continue what I've started as mayor of this city, which is to address the systemic issues around poverty, the high cost of housing, all the myriad of issues which, together with this horrible event, have caused people to react in many understandable ways. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I say it's an opportunity.
We see the emotion playing out there. Some people say that a review just isn't good enough, that something needs to happen immediately. What do you say to those people?
Well, it depends what people mean. An investigation has to take place, right? Accountability can only take place when there has been an investigation, but that doesn't mean that we wait weeks or months to get started on asking many questions which arise out of the public viewing of that video. What should be our pursuit policy for and the use of firearms in pursuing people who are suspected of misdemeanors? What should be what is the policy around activating and ever turning off the body cams? I will say this: the city has been on the front end of video release. We release our video, in this instance, within 3 days. And every one of our officers has body cams. But it's obvious that in the city and in our country that our work is far from done. In addition to the body camera footage, some of the protesters are criticizing the city for economic injustice against minorities. They're saying that it's not just policing, but there are other factors, poverty, unemployment, that need to be addressed. What's your response to that criticism? Well, I agree with that. I think the conversation needs to be broadened. Sacramento, for your national audience, is a city that is in renaissance. I mean, it's a capital city, but it is now becoming a dynamic tech, innovation, art, culture. We have the Golden One Center, the arena. But here's what I hear. There is a disconnect between all of that excitement and growth and our communities, especially our communities of color. And so our job is not only address the circumstances of Stephon Clark's unacceptable death, but to also bridge that gap and make that connection, because if it is not a city for all, then it's not a city that's doing enough. You call the death unacceptable. Do you think that racism had a role in the shooting? I do not believe our police force is racist in any way. I don't think that's intended, but I do believe that implied racism is an undeniable factor in the way these sorts of tragedies play out, not just in Sacramento, but throughout the country. And
what do you mean by implied racism, Mayor?
I mean that people, all of us, law enforcement, but all of us have preconceived attitudes and stereotypes and do in fact react differently to different circumstances depending upon the color of one's skin. I think that's undeniable.
Mayor Darrell Steinberg, thank you very much for your time, Mayor.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.